in a week where Manchester City have clinched the third Premier League title in a row, possibly going for four, a West Ham fan has single-handedly fought off an army of Alkmaar ultras, and Arsenal... Well, I don't really know. I turned it off against Nottingham Forest. This is the FDT-TV podcast. As always, my name is Ian. I'm joined by the ever-so-lovely Michael Hawes. How you doing, Mike?
I'm fabulous, mate. Absolutely fabulous. Love watching football. Can't get enough of football. No, in fact, I think I'm doing a disservice here because I think every Arsenal fan can be immensely proud of what we've achieved this year, considering where we have been for the last couple of seasons. But yeah, I think for fielding one of the youngest squads in the Premier League and looking at the rate and the quality of Manchester City, I think we would have done them a bit of a disservice by winning the league this year. But next year, you know, never know.
No, you never win anything, youngsters, mate. Never win anything, youngsters. So I have a theory about Arsenal and Mikel Arteta. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned because it's quite an interesting theory, and I'm a neutral. Well, I'm not. I'm a West Ham fan. Mike is an Arsenal fan, so we'll get to hear both sides of the coin as to that theory. And Mike doesn't actually know what it is, so he's going to be thinking on his feet a little bit for it. But before we get there, West Ham are in a European Championship match. It's going to be chaos in Prague because I think there's 2,000 tickets that are allocated to each set of fans, and it is against Fiorentina. And it's going to be absolute chaos out there because there's loads of people going out without any tickets. The FA have pushed and said, obviously, the UEFA need to look at it, but I think it's a little bit late for that now, knowing that there would have been a lot of... the final four teams would have brought a lot of travelling fans with them regardless. Should they have moved that to a bigger stadium? Possibly. Don't know. But yeah, West Ham are in a European final. We've gone quite far in two European competitions. Do you think we can beat Fiorentina, Mike?
Excuse me. I do apologise for that.
It's breathtaking.
That's not even part of my answer. No. Anything's possible in football, mate. Anything is possible in football. We've seen a season where the bottom of the league can beat the top of the league. Some minnows in the lower divisions knocking out much higher teams in League Cups and FA Cups and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, you've got every likelihood that you could win it. I was a little bit gutted for you in the Europa League. Mm-hmm. Obviously got to the semi-finals.
Against Rangers.
Not last year.
Yeah, last year.
Oh, it was last year. Yeah, you got to the semi-finals last year. And I think a lot of people were expecting you to push on and win that one. But even in the final, I think you may have come up with some stiff competition. But that being said, yeah, you've got every reason to believe that you can win it. And I think you've got every reason to think you can win it as well. I know the football hasn't been the best considering how well you've been spoiled the last couple of years as a West Ham fan, and I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. You've played some absolutely superb football.
Yep.
And I think the fact that you've got people coming back from injuries, and I think you've been on one of the best runs post-Christmas than some teams. I'm not saying by every team, but you certainly had a better second half of the season than you have the first half of the season. Even in the way that you're playing, we've gone from you being worried about relegation, confirming that you're all but relegated, to yes, we're safe for another season. Yeah, I think there's every likelihood you can win it, and I'll be immensely proud if you do win it.
And we've hit form at the right time, haven't we? Really, last 4 or 5 games we played really well. Obviously the blip at Brentford, but heavily rotated team. We have Leicester to play on the last day of the season. And if I'm honest, I would give some of the youngsters a run out in that. Some of the players who haven't played so much. So Devin Mumba, who's been really good for our under-18s, has come on, played some cameo performances and looks positive, looks like he wants to get on the ball. Got an assist ruled out for that handball last week. And it's just one of those, you think, give him 90 minutes. What you got to lose? He's not going to play 90 minutes in the Europa League final, or Europa Conference League final, I should say. So why not give him a run out? But on the other hand, let's talk about the semi-final quickly, and not necessarily the semi-final, but the things that happen afterwards. So I'm sure some of you have seen there was a geezer called Knowlesy who fought off the AZ Alkmaar faithful, who ripped down a number of gates to get to the friends and family stand of the West Ham players. The stewards did absolutely nothing, and all they did was hold some of the players back from getting to the stand where their families were seated. And this guy, he says he's not a hero, but he is, because that would have been absolute chaos otherwise. Stood at the top of the stairs with one or two other geezers and just battered people away. Got a black eye for it, a bit of shirt. But you think, surely Alkmaar should be kicked out of any competition like that from now on, because that's not acceptable. You can't do that. And the fact that the stewarding was poor. And there was no attempt to even try and segregate it once they were going at it, or once they were going at the fence. It goes back to being, although we're seen as the hooligans of football, we've come a long way since sort of the 80s in our mannerisms behind, obviously, as fans. But what's your take on hooliganism across Europe? Because we're seeing more and more of it now.
Yeah, it's not only hooliganism but racism as well, and I don't think there's enough being done. Obviously, Real Madrid have lodged a complaint as well.
Yep, that was going to be my next
for the
subject.
disgusting scenes at their match. But yeah, no, I agree that there's not enough being done, and I don't think there ever will be enough done about it, because there's always going to be some element of hooliganism and racism. I don't think there's ever going to be a point where we will be able to stamp it out, which is a sad thing to say.
Yeah.
But I think it's just the culture and society that we've been living in for hundreds of years. I know there's obviously progressive movements to try and kick it out. Obviously, kick it out being one of the movements, and there should be harsher punishments. We've seen, I can't remember whether it was who was it, Bulgaria or Hungary or someone when England played.
Yeah.
And there was the scenes of racism and all that sort of stuff, and the punishment that was given out was almost laughable. So yeah, I would like to think that these sorts of complaints and these actions will be taken seriously.
Mm-hmm.
But I just, unfortunately, I think this is the society we live in,
Yep.
that money talks and bullshit walks. I think I'm quoted as saying that as a number of times on
Yep.
this podcast.
So
It does. It's sad. It's a sad state of affairs. But just on the guy, I think if you ever wanted to stereotype an English football fan, he would be it, wouldn't he?
Oh yeah.
As a Londoner football fan, that is
Brilliant.
the epitome of.
Yeah, my biggest concern with it is all the pictures that are published of the West Ham fan battering Alkmaar fans. And you think, actually, UEFA are that short-sighted, they'll look at that and go, well, that's the West Ham fan was out of control. And we'll get the punishment for it. It's a horrible scene. Hopefully it doesn't happen again, but it is what it is. It's happened now, and it just needs to be dealt with properly. And you alluding to, obviously, Real Madrid. If you haven't seen in the news, Vinicius Jr. was subject to another stint of racial abuse from the crowd. One of their players then said something afterwards as well about just get on with it to him, which upset him a little bit more. He did end up getting sent off in that match as well. But he essentially called it out on Twitter to say that the league is run by racists. It is a racist league. There's nothing anyone will do about it. And the president of their league came out and essentially just attacked him and said, well, you haven't bothered showing up to any meetings about it. Which isn't really the attitude that you would want from the guy who's meant to be running it. If his thing is, well, you can't be bothered to turn up, so, well, we're not going to sort it out. Why would he want to turn up to be attacked by that sort of attitude? The thing should be, it should never happen. we should be sorting it out. This is what we're going to do to retrofit it. But that'll be an interesting watch because I think nothing will happen, if I'm honest, as does Vinicius Junior. So as we've said on this podcast many times, it's not something we condone, and it's got no place in football. Everyone has a right to have a dig and a poke, but why has it got to be about skin colour? It just seems silly. Now, an interesting thing that's gone on in the Premier League, Ivan Toney has now been banned for 8 months. He is still being linked with like 60 million moves away. He can play again in January, and that's for 232 cases of betting. Now, I think it's a little bit hypocritical, considering the Premier League have only just come out and banned the advertising of betting on shirts, haven't they? And that's got a couple of years to come in. So what you're essentially asking these players to do is advertise betting companies, do promo for betting companies, and you're not allowed to make any bets. And that's the general rule. You can't make any bets on any football games if you are a professional footballer. Doesn't matter if you're playing in them or not. That's the rules. So I think it's the third highest or longest ban that anyone's received in the Premier League, or the top flight of English football, I should say. He is an out-and-out goal scorer. He has done wrong. He's admitted he's done wrong. But do you think it's a little bit hypocritical of the Premier League to do that and ban him for that length of time, or do you think it's justifiable?
It's a really, really tough one, because I get these guys are professional athletes and all this sort of stuff. And I suppose by betting on football, you could be seen as having or being able to have an influence over a result or certain individuals, that sort of thing. Yep. So I kind of get it. And I suppose from a contract perspective, there must be something in there, not only from your club's perspective, but also from the FA. So obviously there has been a breach of guidelines, because that's why he's been investigated and obviously found out.
Yep.
And subsequently banned. But I do think it's a bit harsh.
Yeah.
But I'm only saying that because for Joe Public, I suppose for me, and I'll put it this way. So for me, obviously working in the finance industry, there could, I suppose, because that could be effectively insider trading. Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah. Yeah, no, I do get it.
Yeah, no, it's one of those that there does need to be a punishment dished out, because he could have insight, he could have influence over people. Obviously, footballers now with social media, with mobiles, are a lot more in contact with all sorts of players up and down the country. The fact that they look at it from that perspective, but haven't looked into some of the refs, haven't looked into some of the things that go exactly. It's a bit ridiculous, really. But say hopefully he'll come back, he'll stay, because he's not allowed to train or anything within a club. No. He can obviously, I'm sure he's got a home gym and stuff, and will keep himself fit if he's sensible. There are links with moves away into across the world, into Europe. And further afield, but the FA are trying to push for FIFA to ban him worldwide from football. I don't think that will be a success, because then that's taking away someone's ability to earn a living, essentially. So it's one of those that they need to treat everybody who's done that or gets caught doing that exactly the same, because there have been, Kieran Trippier got caught for betting, didn't he? Didn't get
Joe Barton. Yeah,
Joe Barton, Matthew Everington. Like there's a few of them that didn't get that sort of punishment. So it's a bit hard to justify one and not the others. I think if that's now the bar, that's where it's got to be set for everybody, whether it's one bet or 1,000. If you know it's an 8-month ban, if you get caught, you're more likely to go, you know what, I'm not going to bother. So, on to my theory of what I alluded to at the beginning of the show. And that theory being Mikel Arteta. Pep Guardiola said he's the best assistant manager he's ever had. Tactically, he's brilliant. Motivationally, brilliant. I don't think Arsenal will ever win a Premier League while he's in charge because he's too nice of a guy. He hasn't got that killer instinct. And some of that comes from not winning loads as a player. And I just think he will be that guy, a bit like Pochettino, will get you almost there a lot of the time, but never quite get you over the line. And that comes from solely being just a too nice guy. I know he's effed and blind, and we see that in the All or Nothing, or latterly known as Nothing, series. But I don't think he's got that ability to instill fear into the players. If you don't do this, I'm going to rip your head off. I don't that old-fashioned Alex Ferguson hairdryer treatment. Do you know what I mean? You see Kevin De Bruyne and Pep Guardiola screaming at each other when they were demolishing Real Madrid. They were 4-0 up, I think, and he's screaming at him because he's not playing well enough. That's that sort of killer instinct I'm on about. You don't see Arteta doing that as much. I think you'll get far FA Cups, things like that. I think you'll win a few of them. League Cups similarly, but I can't see you winning the Premier League with him in charge. What do you make? What do you make of them apples?
I say fuck you. No,
it's a difficult
nice. One. Yeah, nice side. I wouldn't necessarily say he's got a nice side about him. I think he's. You don't know entirely what goes on behind closed doors because obviously we only saw a snippet into last season, and I think the season. No, it was. I can't remember what it was. Last season. Yeah, it was last season. No, it wasn't. It was the season before. Whenever it was. I'm waffling. I'll get to the point. Yeah, there is definitely a nasty streak about him, and I think his passion and his desire is unquestionable.
Yep.
I still think that we didn't have the squad depth in order to compete on the number of fronts that we were doing. I know obviously the League Cup and the FA Cup and the Europa League we were out fairly quickly, but you think we got through all of the group stages. We got through the group stages of the Europa League Cup and then obviously lost over 2 legs in the knockout round. Mm-hmm. Now, again, at the time I said I wasn't bothered because I thought that he would field a rotated side. And unfortunately, it was at that point that we lost William Saliba. Now, I don't mean this disrespectfully, but William Saliba, from what we'd seen of him, yes, there's a mistake in him because he's still relatively young, but I would say he is head and shoulders better than the cover that we had. So your Rob Holdings,
yep,
your Tommy Asu, he's another one. Obviously, we brought Ben White in as a centre back to partner up with Gabriel, but because we'd lost Tommy Asu through an injury, we couldn't then fulfil the right back. Sorry, we couldn't backfill the position in centre back because we needed Ben White at right back because obviously we'd lost Tommy Asu.
Yep.
Kivois, what I've seen of him is not bad, but again, I don't think he's got the quality to help you win titles. I still think we are a few players away from being able to compete right up until the end.
Yep.
And don't get me wrong, obviously we've seen the progression from last season to this season has been monumental. Mm-hmm. Now, granted, there are some teams that have had an off season,
yep,
but there's nothing to say that they're going to they're going to bounce straight back to a better season next year. Obviously, I would say with Liverpool, they haven't got Europa League or they haven't got European football, so their focus is the domestic cup. So your Premier League, the FA Cup, the League Cup. so they haven't got to worry about that this year.
Yeah.
Whereas you've seen the likes of Newcastle, Brighton have secured European football for this season. Those teams, I think, are going to struggle for a similar sort of issue with the increased number of games that we're going to see next year.
Yep.
They'll probably fall away back down the table, obviously depending on how well they recruit. So I think we are a few signings away from being able to compete, and you never know, we may be able to get those done during the summer. There's obviously the ongoing talks about Declan Rice coming to us.
I can't
and
see
that shirt will look lovely on my wall next year, mate.
I don't think he's going anywhere. I have a feeling because he's got another year on his contract. He's then got an option of extension. I think he's going to do at least one more year. But what I'm thinking is this year, obviously I said last week, this year we've got a record number of teams that are shit. And as you said, a number of the usual big six have not been the big six. And you still couldn't get over the line. I know Man City are a force, but I don't think they've played as well as what they could have done for a lot of the time. And they at points were going through goal droughts, even though they've got the record scorer in the Premier League. They weren't scoring many. I can't see Man United getting worse. I think they will only get better under Ten Hag. He's come in, you can see, a bit like Arteta, you can see there's a plan there. It's his first full season. I think they will only get better. Eddie Howe under Newcastle, he's already come out and said, I've spoken to the owners, they're well aware that actually we need to bolster in quality because we're going to be in a Champions League. If we're going to do this again, there are going to be more teams chomping at the bit. Liverpool, an off-season which we predicted, but I think they've shown moments of that quality, and I think they will go out and spend lots of money. Tottenham are a strange one, aren't they? I don't see Tottenham as a big club. I think they are where they need to be, but it looks like they're going to get Arne Slot, who is a good manager. And will get them ticking. Although we've said that last two managers who've won everything everywhere, and they haven't.
Yep.
But I think they will be one that can stir up a result when needed. Chelsea, I can't see them having another bad season. I think the fact that they spent so much money makes it look worse. They brought in so many players; they're all going to take a little bit of time to gel. They've had a turnover of staff. Obviously, Tuchel started the season. Then we went to Potter, who looked like they was going to give him the time. They started to play really good football, but then couldn't find the final third. Then they've gone to Lampard. Same sort of thing. They've played some decent football, but can't find the goal. Now it looks like Poch is coming in. So again, with them, I don't think they're going to win it, but they're going to be thereabouts because that's what he does. He's the thereabouts manager. And then obviously, I'll throw our name in the hat. We've had an off season compared to what we have the last two or three. Villa, I think if they'd had what's his face in Emery all season, they would have been battling for fourth this year because they've been phenomenal since he's come in. Brighton, I think it depends on what players they can keep. There's some big money bids being banded around, but as always, they get rid of one, they bring in another. They've already secured for like 300 grand. Do you know what I mean? I can't see you pushing on and pushing on and pushing on in the same way. I can't see you spending the amount of money that some of these other clubs are going to spend.
But to kind of counter your argument,
yep.
Again, I suppose this is my Arsenal defence. Wolves' barriers have gone up. I get what you're saying. I 100%, no, sorry, I 90% agree with you that there are a lot of teams that have got or that have had off season.
Yep.
Comparatively, compared to previous seasons and the history of the club or whatever. But there's been so many times I've heard this conversation, and it's almost like Arsenal are just going to stay still when we already know that there are due to be departures from the club.
Yep.
For obviously Granit Xhaka, I think, has been a 100% revelation. When you look at his career or his time at Arsenal, it's been very checkered, but certainly over the last couple of seasons. And I think that All or Nothing documentary, like with Arsenal as a club,
Yep.
has kind of embodied the philosophy of Arsenal Football Club as it stands at the moment. But he's obviously the wrong side of 30 now, wants to go back home with to be with his family and stuff. So I do get it. But I don't think that we're going to be sitting around and all these other teams are going to leapfrog us.
I don't
when you
it's
just look at the
necessarily
progression over the
leapfrog. I
last
think
couple of years.
they will come up to your level. I don't think they will necessarily leapfrog you. I think it will be a much more competitive field. And I do think next year you've got an FA Cup in you. I do think you may get to the latter stages of a Champions League. I just, and part of that is maybe squad depth, as you said, but I just can't see you go. I can't see many people leapfrogging Man City for one, but I just with where you were, and I know I said this season you've shown some championship performances or champions winning performances where you've come for it. You've also showed some relegation fodder games. One of them being Nottingham Forest, one of them being against us. You had 14 minutes of absolute bliss, and I'm thinking, oh, here we go, we're going to get drummed 8-9-0 here, and we get a draw out of it. You lost to relegated, or you drew to relegated Southampton. You brought that back in the very last minute of the game. You can't be doing that. It's those results that I know you hope your players learn from because they're young. But can someone who's never won the Premier League as a player know how to get out of that mentality of being comfortable at the top? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I do agree with you, and I think there's been a couple of rumours. Now, you know me, I hate getting caught up in all the transfer rumours and all that sort of stuff. But there's obviously Gundogan. His time at Man City's up. There's talks about us getting him, so it's more experience. Again, I know it's the Manchester City links, and it's like we're getting all their rejects. But you look how much Zinchenko has transformed us. You look at how much Jesus has changed us, and I think again, I don't want to play down the achievements that we've done, because I think at the time where Jesus was out with his injury or whatever, Eddie Nketiah did a job. But on the flip side of that, had Jesus not had the injuries that he had, could that have kicked us on even further? That some of the set pieces that we've had, I think has been, or certainly at the start of the season was, I think we were one of the best defensively, up there with Newcastle. I think just before Christmas we were up there as joint top in terms of defence. Obviously come back from Christmas or whatever, which ties in, I suppose, with Saliba getting injured, Tommy Yasu getting injured, is the times that you start seeing these goals being leaked or whatever. So there are positions, and I think I even said this at the start of the season, certainly, that we potentially are still one or two signings away from really being able to compete. And I suppose going back to the point which you said, the fact that we've led for so long in this league, this season, it does feel like we've bottled it. But if anything, from jumping from sixth to second, in the space of a year is a massive achievement. Had we stayed second throughout the season, I think we could all look back at it and go, yeah, that's a fucking good performance. You mentioned just a minute ago about the relegation fodder. There have been times this season, those games, the Southampton game, the Liverpool game. I say the Liverpool game because there were points that we could have lost that game. But we managed to hold out for a draw. The Bournemouth game, being 2-0 down and managing to clinch the winner right at the very end. So there have been improvements, certainly from the last couple of years as an Arsenal fan, that we've seen under this philosophy, where those games that we would have typically lost, our heads would have dropped. That'd be it, or we'd just try and salvage a draw.
Yep.
We are seeing more of those performances where the draw's not good enough. We have to go for the win. Granted, it's not always come off, but I'd like to think with the crop of players that we've got, whoever decides to stay, we can only build on what we've built over the last couple of years. And I think with those reinforcements, again, it all comes down to what players we get in, the quality of the player, and how well they gel with the side. Obviously, you mentioned Chelsea just a minute ago. They spent absolutely ludicrous amounts of money, but it just hasn't gelled thus far. But their time will come. I completely agree. So I think depending on the caliber of the player and the number of positions that we kind of backfill, we could get those enforcements in of people potentially who have won something in order to give us that mentality.
Yeah. So in short, just to summarise, you can see, you can see. Well, we've both raised some opinions and some thoughts on it. You can see Arteta leading Arsenal to a Premier League title while he's in charge. And question being, obviously, I think Man City are going to do. Man City are going to do it again next year, I think. And I think they'll be the first team to win it 4 times in a row, and then I think they will disappear for a little bit. But how long is it acceptable not to win it or be there or thereabouts before you need to be going, look, we've got to be winning it at some point, otherwise that's not good enough anymore.
I still think 2 years. 2 years is a realistic achievement. So we've got if not next season, then the season after. Okay. So we'll get Man City to get their 4th out of the way. Pep can fuck off, and we'll win it the year after.
Well, I think the year after will be when their financial things start to come, and the points deductions and things, if anything, start to hit. So,
but sorry, just to go back on your point, I suppose ultimately the goal of football is to win stuff, isn't it? It's not always securing top 4. It's not always getting runner-up, because again, no one really remembers the runner-up until we get to this point in the season when we've almost won it, and you're like, oh, you balled it this year.
Yeah.
But the point I'm trying to make is, if we can win the League Cup, if we can win the FA Cup, if we can go on a run in the Champions League, I'm not necessarily saying we're going to win it, because I don't think we will. But if you can get to the latter stages of the Champions League, I still think Arteta's possibly got one of the best chances of replicating your Arsene Wenger's, your Alex Ferguson's. I'm not necessarily saying he's going to be in it that long. But no, I know what I mean? Because obviously I don't think anyone's ever going to hit those types of length of services ever again.
Yeah. Ever.
Certainly in our lifetime, unless something drastically changes in football and all the money goes out of it. But I do think he has the potential to lead us to great things. Yeah. I'll stand by my guy.
No, that's fair enough. It's not that I don't think you'll win nothing under him. It's just I can't see a Premier League under him. And would you be happy if it turned out to be sort of the end of the Wenger era, where he was winning regular FA Cups and things like that, and just stayed in the top 4, or would that eventually not be enough again?
I don't know. It is a tough one.
Because it's one of those,
a tough one. And
it's a good position to be in, but actually, I want to win a Premier League. I don't want to be the top 4 team. Do you know what I mean?
And I'm sure even the likes of Harry Kane are just getting to the point where you need to go off and actually win something. If he doesn't leave Spurs, then there's something drastically wrong with him, and he's obviously just comfortable picking up his paycheck. Yeah, you are right. Obviously, the goal, or I wouldn't necessarily say the dream, but I mean, you go back to players like Ian Wright. Ian Wright desperately wanted his hands on that the Premier League trophy, and I think he was gutted for the 96-97 season that he didn't. I think they just missed out on that year, and obviously he was devastated. It's well documented. Obviously, if you watch any interviews with him, and the first year he won it, I think it was 97, 98, and he was over the moon. So to say that I think people would be happy going out and winning the domestic trophy every year, I think there's ultimately got to be that desire to win it.
Yeah.
So there may actually come to a point. I suppose it just depends on where you're sitting and where the board feel. Because, like I said, if you're finishing third or fourth,
money's
winning,
rolling in,
and you're winning the FA Cup or the League Cup, or I don't know, dropping down even into the Europa League and winning the Europa League, like getting in the third spot or whatever.
Yeah.
And winning the Europa League that way. It's still making the club money.
Yeah.
It's still winning stuff. So I think people would be happy, but then there would always be that little, I do want to win the league.
Yeah. And just as a thing about transfers, obviously I just want to go over a few teams here. You mentioned Gundogan, or Gundogan, I don't know how you pronounce his name. He apparently is in talks with City, isn't he, over a new contract. I think he may stay because he's a captain at the minute. He had that horrendous leg break, didn't he, when he first got there? And it was like, will he play again? Actually, he's matured. He's come back as a better player, I think. And it, at points, won them games. So I think they will be not desperate to keep hold of him, but I think if they can do it and both parties are happy, even if it's a 1-year deal, I can see that. Obviously, yourselves looking at Declan Rice and Moise Caicedo from Brighton. West Ham have said 120 million for Declan Rice, which I think is a ridiculous amount of money. I potentially there is the interest there because you've thrown your names in the hat. Chelsea have thrown their names in the hat. Man United have thrown their names in the hat. Bayern Munich today have come out and said we're interested in talking to the player. So, do you think out of those teams you could offer him a package that's financially, because that's the way I think it's going to go, isn't it? If he goes to Bayern Munich, you're going to win things. If he goes to Man City, potentially he's going to win things. If he goes to you, potentially he's going to win. There's potential of all of them, and I think it comes down to who's prepared to throw the most money at him. And I think for in some senses, I think Chelsea or Man City will just go for broke. He's $500,000 a week, and have at it. Do you think you can compete on that sort of front for players?
No. Being a complete realist, but again, not to try and get too worked up or too excited about transfer rumours. There are some well-respected people within the transfer business that I've read reports for to say that a fee has been agreed, and I think one of the sticking points was the amount of money that was paid up front to start off with. But again, some other reports I've read to say that the Cronkies are happy to stump up the money to kind of secure this deal. So, I mean, ultimately, it comes down to whether the player wants to join the club, because I know there are quite a lot of younger people who seem to think that real day football runs like a FIFA Ultimate Team, which we've had conversations about previously. Unfortunately, it's not a simple case of being able to open a pack and go, oh, I've got Declan Rice in my team. There's obviously negotiations, agents want fees, etc. So there's
a lot more to it.
So the player's got to want to move. The club's got to be happy. The buying club's got to be happy with the price. The selling club's got to be happy with the price. Mm-hmm. I mean, it may even come down to it that the offer that we've got now, I'm using the term now as lucratively as possible, because I don't know if it has been or not, but the offer that we may have put up is may fall short. Obviously, we were leading the Mudryk race for the majority of the transfer window. Then Chelsea come out and said, "Oh, actually, here's a lot more money. Here's a lot more wages. Here's a lot more for your agent's fee. We'll do that." So, again, until the contract signed on the dotted line and he's announced on Arsenal.com as an Arsenal player,
you can't believe.
I'd like to think, yeah, exactly. I'd like to think the displays that we've been put on most part would be enough to kind of entice the player. And apparently, Eddie's come out saying that we are getting some big players knocking on the doors of Arsenal Football Club again. It's nice to be in that position, but obviously it's got to be happy for all parties on that.
And it's one of those, I think you've had your fingers burnt a few times with some big players, and I think they will do their due diligence a lot better than they have done.
Yes.
It's one of those. I think obviously David Gold, I think it is, that's still there. He will offer 50p in a packet of Monster Munch for the best player in the world, but when it comes to selling these players, he refuses. Obviously, Lanzini, Liverpool offered 50 million 6-7 years ago for him, and they turned it down. Now he looks like he's going to be leaving on a free. Payet, another one, could have gone for close to 70 million. We ended up selling him back to Marseille for like 14. Marko Arnautovic went for almost nothing because he refuses to sell them. So I think he will want most of that 100 million plus up front. And the other thing that I think is interesting, because obviously with the 2 years left on his contract, we could force him to stay. I think that's an unhealthy place to be going and conversations to be having. But the Glazers are trying to sell Manchester United or part of Manchester United. So Sir Jim Ratcliffe, isn't it, has gone in saying, I will come in and financially support it. And you've got Sheikh, someone who wants to buy it completely from them. There are rumours circling that if he can't get Manchester United, he is interested in West Ham. So at that point, if we've got sort of the Arab money coming in, so to speak, could he throw silly money at him? He is 300, 400k a week, which is what he wants to stay. We offered him, I think, 100,000 a week, which is silly because that doesn't even make him our highest paid player. But there are all these cogs and things which could change. Speaking of Manchester United, they're probably going to be in for, I reckon, a goalkeeper and a striker. Could Harry Kane be going there? I don't know. The geezer for Osimhen from Napoli is another one linked with them. Do you think if they get a decent 20-goal a season striker, they're going to be competing for the title next year, or do you think there's still a couple of bits missing from that puzzle?
There's still a couple of pieces, but striker crucially, obviously, Weghorst or whatever his name is, was a strange signing, and I think we documented it at the time to say that wasn't a Manchester United signing. They were obviously just desperate, to kind of bolster their squads a little bit with a striker. I
think he's done a job, hasn't he? But he's not scored many. But he runs around and wins the ball back, which I think is part of it. He just couldn't get the finish. Obviously, Chelsea again with a goalkeeper and a striker. That's what Poch has come out and said, and possibly another midfielder. I think Bolhi has got in his contract. He's got to spend some more. I think it's 400 million more before he can just sit back and do nothing. I think there will be a lot of outgoings from Chelsea this year, but I do think they'll probably get one or two big ones in. Again, can they meld? They're not going to win anything under Poch because he's not that guy. He went to a one-league team and lost. So it doesn't fill me with confidence if I was a Chelsea fan. I quite like teasing my dad about it. But with them. And then who else? Obviously, you were your midfielders. And a few other players to bring in for squad depth, as you mentioned. There was one other.
Tottenham.
No, I don't give a fuck about Tottenham. If Tottenham lose Harry Kane, do they get relegated? I don't know. It's the best thing about it is Tottenham can still finish 9th, right? Which is horrendous when you look at where they were and who they had in charge. So they had Mourinho in charge, who's won something everywhere they go, or everywhere he's been. He could have won, but they sacked him, the week before the League Cup final? Yep. They then brought in Conte, who has done the same, won something everywhere they've gone, had moments of brilliance, but didn't really seem to back him completely. Did to some respect, but not in its entirety of all the players he wanted. They've not won anything. And now they're trying to make signings without a manager in charge. They could finish 9th. The best striker in the world is that never won anything could leave. There's a lot of uncertainty. And amongst that, they have the highest season ticket price in Europe. So to be a Tottenham fan, you might, I know everyone gives everyone a bit of stick, but if you're a Spurs fan, you must like getting kicked in the teeth while you're on your knees. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's got to be some sort of kink for it. Because why would you pay that much money to be running the way they are? And I have said it for a long time. Daniel Levy is a brilliant businessman. The stadium they've got, brilliant. The money they're pulling in, brilliant. In terms of football, it's still that mid-table mediocrity team at its core. And I think they may be the next people to try and sell up. But again, they're going to command a big fee for not a lot. But in terms of predictions, because that's what we're doing really, is predicting things. I'm not very good, but we do have a trophy. Which is I was good at, I had an amazing comeback last year of predicting things. So the way we do it, we predict a few fixtures and maybe some sporting events every week. 3 points for a correct result and correct score. 1 point for a correct result. No points for the incorrect result. Get the words out. So last week we had a few because we had Championship semi-finals, we had an Arsenal game, we had a West Ham game. So there was a lot of points up for grabs and I was a fair bit behind. So the drum roll is, have I managed to catch up? Over to you, Mike.
Oh, right. So there were 4 games. Nottingham Forest versus Arsenal, West Ham United versus Leeds, Luton versus Sunderland, and Borough versus Coventry. 4 games, a maximum 12 points to catch, or to make a dent into to catching. Nottingham Forest versus Arsenal. I don't think we need to go over that game. It was a piss poor game. You predicted 1-1. I predicted 2-2. And it seemed to be because the league was already over. We thought it was kind of a dead and buried fixture. It turns out we were correct because Nottingham Forest won 1-0.
Yep.
So 0 points to each of us there. West Ham United versus Leeds, obviously with the resurgence of Sam Allardyce battling to keep Leeds United up. Obviously went 1-0 up early doors and looked like it could have been a bit of an upset on the cards. But you predicted a 3-1 to Leeds. I predicted 2-1 to Leeds. The score was 3-1 to West Ham. So 0 points there for the pair of us. Luton versus Sunderland. Championship playoff semi-final.
Yep.
Second leg, you went for 2-2 Luton. You went for 2-2. I went for 2-1 to Sunderland. And it was 2-0 to Luton. So Luton obviously win on aggregate. 0 points to the pair of us. So
yeah.
You may be sensing a bit of a theme here, Ian. I just snorted. What the fuck was that? The final game, Borough versus Coventry, the other semi-final. You went for 1-0 to Borough and I went 2-1 to Coventry. And the score was 1-0 to Coventry. So Coventry now face Luton in the Championship playoff final. 0 points to you and 1 point to me. So that takes the season totals thus far. Well, no, it's being concluded. We are concluding the FIFA Day Trophy Predictions Trophy today. Ian, you finished the season on 48 points, and I absolutely romped ahead on 68 points this year. It's coming.
I don't want to
it's
say I
coming.
predicted Arsenal bottling the league, so that's why I threw some really dodgy results in there, just so you wasn't that upset. You know what I mean?
Thanks, mate.
I'm a good friend like that. It's
And that does also include. So I'm sure we'll be doing it again the same next season. The sack race and the overall, or predicting the. Oh no, we haven't done the overall winner.
I think we did. I think I got that right. Not that it would
No,
make.
what I'm saying is we didn't add the points on for that.
No, not that it would make any difference.
No, you're right. It wouldn't. But yeah, so we also did the sack race as well. So you went for Steven Gerrard and I went for Frank Lampard. Obviously, Gerrard got the sack first, so you got the bonus point added way back when he got sacked. So yeah, unfortunately, son, even with those 2 bonus points, you couldn't do it this year. So
No.
I shall look forward to having the trophy sitting on my desk
Yeah, well,
desk next year.
You're not sitting it on there. I don't want it back if I win it after that. That's disgusting. But yeah, so join in every week next season. Obviously, we've got a lot more things to come. Next week, we will have a bit of a different podcast. We will have a video out more to do with season summaries and roundups and things like that and thoughts for the future. So let us know if you want to see anything else. But Mike, have you got anything else to add? Have you got anything else to add to this week's podcast?
No, nothing other than just to say it's been an absolute pleasure again this year. I thoroughly enjoy coming over and doing these every Monday. So just to reiterate, we will be back next year with more videos. So make sure you stay tuned, hit that notification bell because we will be back.
Mm-hmm. And until then, I've been Ian.
I've been Mike.
We will see you next week with some sort of media. Until then, enjoy the rest of the season. Take care.